Chapter 1. The Worst Method Acting Ever. The audition room smelled like dust, desperation, and the faint, lingering ghost of someone's lunch. For Yang Tian, it smelled like home. He bounced on the balls of his feet in the narrow hallway outside Studio B, his third-generation hand-me-down backpack clutched to his chest. Around him, a dozen other theater students from the Shanghai Academy of Dramatic Arts paced, muttered lines, or sat in stony silence, radiating the kind of intense, competitive energy that Yang Tian found absolutely delicious. "This is it, Bao," he whispered to the small, slightly squashed bunny plushie peeking out of his backpack. Bao's single remaining button eye gleamed in the fluorescent light. The immersive theater piece to end all immersive pieces. The Darkest Night. Can you believe it? They're not even doing traditional auditions. They want us to experience the role. Method acting to the max. The girl next to him, who had been vigorously chewing her fingernails, shot him a look of pure bewilderment. Yang Tian grinned at her. Nervous? Don't be. Just think of it as the most elaborate trust fall you've ever done. She looked away, muttering something about unhinged. A door at the end of the hall creaked open. Actually creaked like someone had oiled the hinges specifically to make that sound, and a gaunt stage manager with circles under his eyes that could have been designer luggage called out. Yang Tian? Yang Tian, you're next. That's me. Yang Tian practically skipped forward, patting the stage manager on the arm as he passed. Love the commitment to the aesthetic, by the way. The exhaustion? Very post-apocalyptic. The stage manager just stared at him. The room he entered was dark. Not dim, not shadowy, but absolutely, profoundly dark. Yang Tian stood in the doorway for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. He could just make out a single wooden chair in the center of the space, illuminated by a lone, flickering spotlight. Ooh, minimalist. I like it, he announced to the empty room. Very Beckett meets early 2000s horror movie. Bold choice. He strode confidently to the chair and sat down, crossing his legs and folding his hands in his lap like a talk show host waiting for their guest. Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with your worst. What's my motivation? Am I the victim? The plucky final girl? The comic relief who dies first but is so beloved they come back as a sassy ghost. Silence. Then a voice. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a low, resonant hum that vibrated in his bones. Close your eyes. Yang Tian obediently squeezed his eyes shut. Eyes closed. Sensory deprivation. Excellent. Getting me in the headspace. The world tilted. It wasn't a dizzy spell. It was a fundamental shift, like someone had grabbed the entire room and given it a good, hard shake. Yang Tian's stomach lurched, and for a moment he felt impossibly heavy, then impossibly light. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer in the audition room. He was lying on his back on cold, damp cobblestones. Above him, a sky the color of a bad bruise churned with sluggish, gray clouds. The air smelled of wet stone, rotting leaves, and something else, something metallic and old. Yang Tian sat up slowly, blinking. He was in a town square. Sort of. It was more like a town square that had been in a really bad breakup with the concept of happiness. Crumbling stone buildings with dark, empty windows leaned at precarious angles around him. A fountain in the center of the square was filled not with water, but with a tangle of dead, thorny vines. A thick, soupy fog coiled along the ground like it was looking for ankles to grab. For a long moment, Yang Tian just stared. Then a massive, brilliant grin spread across his face. Holy cow, he breathed. The budget on this production. He scrambled to his feet, spinning in a slow circle, taking it all in with the awe of a tourist at the Grand Canyon. The set design, the atmosphere, they must have built an entire backlit. How'd they get the light to look like that? Is that a filter? Are there hidden projectors? He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. No signal, of course, but there was a text message waiting for him on the home screen. Welcome to Raven's Peak. Your performance starts now. Yang Tian pumped his fist. Yes, I got the part. I knew my interpretation of terrified but quirky was exactly what they were looking for. He pocketed his phone and started walking, his footsteps echoing too loudly in the oppressive silence. A figure darted across an alleyway up ahead. Yang Tian's heart leaped. "Hey," he called out, jogging towards the alley. "Hey, fellow cast member, wait up." He rounded the corner and found a man pressed against the wall, his eyes wide with terror. He was dressed in ordinary clothes, jeans, a worn jacket, and he was trembling so hard Yang Tian could hear his teeth chattering. "Hi there," Yang Tian said brightly, extending a hand. "I'm Yang Tian. I'm new. Is this the green room? Or, the gray, damp, slightly terrifying room? Where's everyone?" The man stared at his outstretched hand like it was a venomous snake. He let out a choked whimper, then bolted, disappearing into the fog. Yang Tian watched him go, his hand still extended. He slowly lowered it, nodding with approval. Wow, excellent commitment to the terrified local archetype. The trembling was very nuanced, but he ran away a little too fast. He should have hesitated, shown some internal conflict. Maybe stumbled. He pulled out a small notebook from his backpack and jotted down a note. Note to self: run away from me more dramatically. Pause for effect first. He continued his exploration, humming a tune from Rent. He passed a butcher shop with hooks that still held remnants. He walked by a window where a porcelain doll seemed to track his movement with its painted eyes. He strolled past a house where the wallpaper was peeling in patterns that looked disturbingly like screaming faces. And he complimented all of it. "Love the texture on these bricks. Very authentic. Oh, a doll that moves? Animatronics. So clever. The screaming face wallpaper is a choice. Very bold. A little on the nose, but I respect the commitment." He was so engrossed in his one-man architectural critique tour that he almost missed the massive, decaying mansion at the edge of town. It rose from the fog like a skeletal hand clawing its way out of the earth. Most of its windows were shattered, and the grand double doors hung open, creaking gently in a non-existent breeze. Yang Tian stopped, his jaw dropping. "Oh, this is it. This is my entrance. This is where the protagonist finds the creepy old house. Classic." He straightened his jacket, took a deep breath, and strode up the overgrown path, through the gaping doorway, and into the darkness within. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous, dust-shrouded foyer. "It's Yang Tian, your lead. I'm here for my first scene." From the grand staircase above, a shadow deeper than the others began to move. Chapter 2. The makeup department is incredible. The inside of the mansion was even more impressive than the outside, if that was possible. A chandelier lay in a million crystal pieces on the marble floor. Portraits of stern-faced people stared down from the walls, their eyes seeming to follow Yang Tian as he wandered, oohing and awing. Dust motes danced in the thin slivers of gray light that pierced through the boarded-up windows. "Production design is really going for it," Yang Tian murmured, running a finger along a dusty banister. "The attention to detail is phenomenal. This dust feels historically accurate." He wandered into what must have been a ballroom. It was vast and empty, the only sound the soft crunch of broken glass under his sneakers. At the far end, a massive, tarnished mirror dominated the wall. Yang Tian walked towards it, checking his reflection. He straightened his hair, practiced a few terrified expressions in the glass. Wide eyes, trembling lip, the works. Suddenly, the air behind him turned cold. Not just a little chilly. It was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, that whispered of graveyards and forgotten things. Yang Tian's breath misted in front of his face, and in the mirror, a figure materialized behind him. He was tall, impossibly tall. He was dressed in flowing, dark robes that seemed to drink the light. His skin was pale, so pale it was almost translucent, and his face was a study in sharp angles and aristocratic cruelty. His eyes were black, bottomless pits, and his long, dark hair stirred in a wind that wasn't there. A dark, viscous liquid dripped from his hand, pooling on the floor without a sound. He was, without a doubt, the most terrifying thing Yang Tian had ever seen. Yang Tian's eyes went wide. His jaw dropped. He spun around, his hands flying to his cheeks. "Oh, my God!" The figure, Lung Su, the Ghost King, the Eater of Fear, the dread of 1,000 nights, leaned forward, letting his full, soul-crushing aura radiate outwards. He had been watching this strange, humming human for hours, utterly baffled by his behavior. Now was the moment of reckoning. Now the fear would come. Young Tian stepped closer. His face was alight with pure, unadulterated artistic ecstasy. "The special effects," he gasped. "Are you kidding me? That prosthetic work on your skin is insane. It looks so real. And the costume, the dripping blood, is that a gel? It has the perfect viscosity. You're so dedicated to the role, you're actually making it cold in here. Is that a portable air conditioner? Do you have one of those vests with ice packs?" Lung Su froze. His aura sputtered. Yang Tian was now close enough to touch. He was beaming up at the Ghost King, his eyes sparkling with admiration. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small bag of popcorn. "Do you want some? Craft Services left it for me in the square. It's a little stale, but the salty flavor really adds to the whole decaying ambience, don't you think?" He held the bag out. Lung Su stared at the popcorn. He stared at the human. He had existed for over 800 years. He had witnessed dynasties fall, plagues sweep across continents, and men driven to madness by his mere presence. Never in all that time had anyone offered him popcorn. His perfectly executed entrance was ruined. He was utterly flummoxed. Frustrated, he leaned in closer until his cold, dead face was inches from Yang Tian's warm, living one. He let his eyes glow a deep, menacing red. Yang Tian gasped again. He didn't flinch back. He leaned in. "Oh my God, the contacts. They're LED lit. I can see the little circuit. Can you blink? Is that comfortable? They must dry your eyes out so badly." He squinted, studying them with the intensity of an ophthalmologist. "For your character, though, is he a vengeful ghost? A demon? I think you should try for a more haunted weariness, you know? Less angry red, more tragic, yearning blue. Like, you've been dead for centuries, and you just want someone to understand you. The red is very raw, but the blue is I have feelings. It's more nuanced." Lung Su's red glow flickered and died. He straightened up, his expression shifting from terrifying to utterly bewildered. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. What did one say to a human who critiqued your supernatural intimidation tactics? Yang Tian misinterpreted his silence completely. "Oh, you're staying in character. I respect that. Okay, I'll play along." He popped a piece of popcorn into his mouth and crunched it cheerfully. "So, Mr. Scary Ghost, what's my first scene? Am I here to be your victim? Your reincarnated lover? The plucky medium who's here to solve your murder?" He gasped again, a new thought striking him. "Oh, are you the one I have a duet with? Is this a musical? I can sing. My vibrato needs work, but my belt is solid." Lung Su just stared at him. Yang Tian waited, expectant. Nothing. He sighed, a little theatrically. "Okay, still in character. The strong, silent type. I get it. Well, I'm going to go explore my new dressing room. Let me know when we start rehearsal." And with a cheerful wave, Yang Tian turned and strolled out of the ballroom, humming again, leaving the most feared entity in the underworld standing alone in the dark, holding the bag of popcorn he had somehow been left holding. Lung Su looked down at the popcorn. He looked at the doorway where the strange, sunny human had disappeared. A single, impossible thought crossed his ancient, deathless mind. What has happened? Chapter 3. A Helpful Director. For the next 3 days, Lung Su was obsessed. He followed Yang Tian everywhere, watching him from shadows, from inside walls, from the reflection in puddles. He watched the human explore the mansion, chattering happily to a one-eyed rabbit doll. He watched him furnish a small, relatively clean parlor with cushions he'd found and declared it his green room. He watched him practice his lines, which seemed to consist of him making up increasingly elaborate backstories for the portraits on the walls. And every time Lung Su tried to scare him, it backfired spectacularly. Attempt number 1. The classic mirror appearance. Yang Tian was brushing his teeth. He'd found a bottle of water somewhere, in front of the tarnished ballroom mirror. Lung Su materialized right behind him, letting his form shift and flicker, his face twisting into a grotesque mask of horror. Yang Tian spat out a mouthful of toothpaste. "Oh hey, good morning. Love the new look. Very Cronenberg. But, if you're going for viscera, the jaw dislocation is a classic, but have you considered more eye trauma? Like when I just gone? It's cheaper, but the implication is stronger. Psychological horror, you know?" Lung Su's face slowly reformed into its usual handsome, cold mask. He faded away without a word. Attempt number 2. The flying objects. Yang Tian was in the library, organizing the books by color. Suddenly, every book on every shelf flew off simultaneously, swirling around him in a tornado of ancient leather and paper. Yang Tian clapped his hands. "A poltergeist scene? Fabulous. The energy is great." He grabbed a floating copy of Paradise Lost, but the follow-through was weak. "The books should have shattered the windows. Really make me feel like I'm in danger. And then, right at the peak of the chaos, you should appear in the center of the storm and just hold my gaze. Smolder. Use the chaos as your entrance." The books all dropped to the floor with a deafening thud. Attempt number 3. The Whispered Terrors. That night, as Yang Tian curled up on his makeshift bed of cushions, a cold, dead voice whispered directly into his ear. "I have watched you sleep for 3 nights, little sunbeam. I know the rhythm of your heart. I know the softness of your throat. I could snuff out your light with a thought." Yang Tian, without opening his eyes, murmured sleepily, "Nice. Really intimate. The little sunbeam is a good nickname. But your delivery was a little flat. Try it again with more longing, less threat, more loneliness. Like you don't want to snuff out my light, you just want to feel its warmth. That's the conflict. Work on it." A frustrated, spectral sigh stirred the dust in the corner. By the 4th day, something had shifted. Lung Su found himself thinking about Yang Tian's notes. He found himself watching not to find a moment of fear, but to see what ridiculous thing he would do next. When Yang Tian hummed, Lung Su would find the tune stuck in his spectral head. When Yang Tian laughed at something his rabbit doll said, Lung Su felt a strange pull at the corner of his own cold, dead mouth. One afternoon, he found Yang Tian in the overgrown garden, trying to coax a single, stubborn weed into blooming. Lung Su appeared beside him, silent and still. Yang Tian looked up, a smudge of dirt on his nose. "Oh, Suji," he'd taken to calling him that, a mix of respect and affectionate teasing. "Perfect timing. I've been thinking about your backstory." Lung Su stiffened. "My backstory? Yeah, for the play. The why of your character. It's a little cliché, honestly. Angry ghost, kills people very one note. I think you need more layers." Lung Su felt a flicker of something unfamiliar. Embarrassment? Annoyance? He was 800 years old. His story was not cliché. "My wife was murdered by my brother on our wedding night, and I was falsely accused and executed," he said flatly, the words he hadn't spoken in centuries tumbling out before he could stop them. "My rage has sustained me for 800 years. Yang Tian listened, his head tilted. When Lung Su finished, he nodded slowly. Okay, I see where you were going. Tragedy, betrayal, revenge. Classic foundation. But Suji, that's your plot, not your motivation. What do you feel now? After 800 years of rage, aren't you just tired? Lonely? Don't you miss the feeling of the sun on your face? Don't you just want someone to see you, not the Ghost King, but the man you were?" Lung Su stared at him. The words hit him with a force no physical blow ever could. Tired? Lonely? He had never allowed himself to think it. Rage was all he had. It was easier. Yang Tian grinned, misinterpreting his stunned silence as deep thought. "See? We're building a character. Okay, now, for your entrance in the next scene, let's try it again. But this time, instead of trying to scare me, try yearning. Just look at me like you've been alone for 800 years, and you've finally found someone who doesn't run away." Lung Su, the eater of fear, the dread of 1,000 nights, found himself nodding. He took a breath he didn't need, and he looked at Yang Tian. He didn't try to be scary. He didn't try to be intimidating. He just looked. He let the centuries of solitude, of cold, of emptiness flicker in his dark eyes. Yang Tian's breath caught. The grin faded from his face, replaced by something softer, more genuine. For a moment, he wasn't looking at a terrifying ghost. He was looking at a man, a deeply sad, incredibly beautiful, profoundly lonely man. Wow, Yang Tian whispered. That was it, Suji. That was perfect. And for the first time in 800 years, Lung Su felt something other than rage. He felt seen. Chapter 4. A Deal with the Deranged. Their strange, domestic routine was shattered on the seventh night. Yang Tian was in the garden again, talking to Bao the rabbit about the incredible creative chemistry he was developing with his moody, method-acting co-star. The air was still and quiet. Too quiet. Suddenly, the world turned green. It wasn't a gentle, spring green. It was a sickly, toxic green that made the hair on Yang Tian's arm stand up. The air crackled with an energy that was nothing like Lung Su's cold. This was hot, sharp, and invasive. A woman materialized at the edge of the garden. She was beautiful in the way a perfectly preserved corpse is beautiful, flawless, but deeply, fundamentally wrong. Her lips were painted a bloody red, and her eyes were the same sickly green as the light. Well, she purred, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. What do we have here? The Ghost King's new pet? I wondered what had him so distracted. Yang Tian blinked. Hi there. Are you from the costume department? Because that dress is gorgeous. The embroidery is exquisite. Are you another cast member? A rival ghost? Ooh. Are you the scorned lover from his past? The witch, for that is what she was, Madame Yu, a centuries-old sorceress who had long sought to bind Lung Su's power to her own, laughed. It was not a nice laugh. Oh, you are precious. No, little mortal, I am not a cast member. I am your end. She raised a hand, and the green light coalesced into a bolt of pure, searing energy. It hit Yang Tian in the chest. It hurt. It wasn't like the stage blood or the fake cold. This was a real, white-hot, agonizing pain that ripped through him, stealing his breath and his warmth. He cried out, collapsing to his knees. For the first time since he'd arrived in Raven's Peak, genuine fear flickered in his eyes. Before Madame, you could strike again, the air between them shattered. Lung Su appeared in an explosion of pure darkness. He wasn't the moody, yearning ghost Yang Tian had been directing. He was the Ghost King. His eyes were pits of absolute void, and the aura radiating from him was so dense with terror that the very plants around him withered and died. He placed himself between Yang Tian and the witch, and the ground beneath his feet began to crack. You dare touch what is mine? His voice was not a whisper. It was the sound of the earth swallowing the dead. Madame Yu's confidence faltered. She hadn't anticipated this level of fury. Yours? Lung Su, since when do you have yours? I was merely investigating your new source of power. Lung Su didn't answer with words. He raised a hand, and the darkness lunged. The fight was over in seconds. It wasn't a battle. It was an evisceration. Lung Su didn't fight Madame Yu. He unmade her attack, scattering her magic like ashes in the wind. With a final, terrified shriek, she dissolved into the green light and fled, her essence wounded. The moment she was gone, the darkness receded. Lung Su turned, and the fury in his eyes melted into something else when he saw Yang Tian, still on his knees, clutching his chest, his face pale. Yang Tian looked up at him. His eyes were wide, but the fear was gone. It was replaced by dawning, monumental realization. Wait, he whispered, his voice shaky. Wait. He pointed a trembling finger at Lung Su. That was real. The pain was real. She was real. He looked around at the scorched garden, the crack in the earth. This isn't a play, is it? Lung Su knelt in front of him. He wanted to lie, to protect this strange fantasy the human lived in. But he couldn't. No, he said quietly. It is not. The play is over, Yang Tian. You are my world now. And that which is a problem. He expected fear. He expected screaming. He expected Yang Tian to finally react the way every other human had for 800 years. Instead, Yang Tian's pale face slowly broke into the most brilliant, insane grin Lung Su had ever seen. You're not an actor. Yang Tian breathed. You're the real deal. A real, actual, terrifying ghost king. Oh my god, this is even better. He scrambled to his feet, wincing slightly. The pain was already fading, replaced by his boundless, irrepressible excitement. Okay, let me process. I'm in a real horror world. You're a real ghost. There's a real evil witch. This isn't a play. He started pacing. So that means we're not in a horror movie. We're in a buddy cop movie. I'm the plucky, human sidekick who doesn't know the rules, and you're the jaded, supernatural detective who has to protect me while we take down the big bad. Lung Su stared. Are you not afraid? Yang Tian stopped pacing and looked at him, his expression softening. Terrified, he admitted, that hurt. A lot. I just found out ghosts are real, and one of them wants to kill me. But you know what? He walked up to Lung Su and poked him in the chest. It was solid. Cold, but solid. My terrifying, edgy, supernaturally dedicated scene partner just saved my life. So I think I'm in pretty good hands. He beamed. Okay, so, let's go get that witch. But first, you're gonna need a better origin story. The whole brother killed my wife thing is a good start, but we need to workshop it. Make it less about revenge and more about misplaced trust. That's the real tragedy. Lung Su, the most feared entity in the underworld, simply shook his head, a ghost of a smile, his first real smile in centuries, tugging at the corner of his lips. You are utterly, completely insane. Probably. Yang Tian agreed cheerfully. Now, let's make a plan. Do you have a murder board? Every good detective needs a murder board. Chapter 5. The First Touch. In the days that followed, Yang Tian threw himself into his new role as supernatural detective sidekick with the same chaotic energy he'd once reserved for theater rehearsals. So, let me get this straight, he said, pacing in front of Lung Su, who sat on an ornate, dust-covered throne in the mansion's main hall. Madame Yu is a witch who's been trying to steal your ghost powers for like 100 years. She's got minions, lesser spirits, and dark creatures she's bound to her will. And her lair is? An old funeral parlor on the other side of town, Lung Su supplied. Of course it is. That's perfect. The aesthetic continuity in this world is chef's kiss. Yang Tian stopped pacing. Okay, I need to be useful. I can't just be the damsel in distress you have to rescue every 5 minutes. You have to teach me about the supernatural. Lung Su raised an eyebrow. You are human. You have no defenses against the supernatural. Then teach me to have defenses. How do I spot a minion? How do I protect myself from magic? What are the rules? Lung Su sighed, a long-suffering sound he was becoming disturbingly accustomed to making. Very well. The first lesson, understanding what you're dealing with. He stood and glided towards Yang Tian. Most spirits are intangible. They cannot touch the living. But I am different. He stopped inches away. I can choose to be solid, or I can choose to be nothing at all. To demonstrate, he slowly, deliberately, phased his hand through Yang Tian's chest. He expected a yelp, a flinch, a stumble backwards. What he got was a sharp intake of breath and a shiver that ran through Yang Tian's entire body. Whoa! Yang Tian breathed, looking down at the spectral hand disappearing into his own sternum. That feels tingly, like static electricity, but everywhere. It's kind of... He shivered again, a pleased little sound escaping his lips. It's kind of nice, actually. Lung Su froze. He had never, in 8 centuries, heard his touch described as nice. Before he could pull away, Yang Tian's hand shot up and grabbed his wrist. Can you solidify it? Yang Tian asked, his eyes bright with curiosity. The texture is fascinating. I want to feel the difference. Lung Su should have pulled away. This was too intimate, too strange, too much. But the warmth of Yang Tian's fingers on his spectral wrist was like nothing he had ever felt. It was a pull, a temptation, a promise. Slowly, he let his hand become solid within Yang Tian's chest. Yang Tian gasped again, his eyes fluttering shut. The tingle intensified, becoming a warm, electric pulse that seemed to radiate from the point of contact and spread through his entire body. And for Lung Su, the sensation was even more profound. He could feel it, Yang Tian's heartbeat, strong and steady against his palm. He could feel the warmth of his living flesh, the subtle expansion and contraction of his lungs. He could feel life, pure and vibrant and achingly beautiful. For a long, suspended moment, they simply stood there, connected in a way that transcended the physical. Yang Tian's hand was still wrapped around Lung Su's wrist, grounding him. Yang Tian opened his eyes. They were soft, wondering. "Suji," he whispered, "is it always like that? Touching the living?" Lung Su couldn't answer. His voice was gone. He slowly, reluctantly, pulled his hand free. The cold rushed back in to fill the space where the warmth had been, and he felt its absence like a physical wound. He stared at his own hand, then at Yang Tian's face, his ancient heart. A heart he thought had turned to dust long ago, beating a rhythm it hadn't known for centuries. Yang Tian, for once, didn't fill the silence with chatter. He just smiled, a small, genuine smile, and gave Lung Su's wrist a gentle squeeze before letting go. "Okay," he said, his voice a little husky. Lesson 2. But they both knew the most important lesson had already been learned. Chapter 6. A Date with Death. Their investigations into Madame Yu's activities often took them on long walks through Raven's Peak. Yang Tian would chatter, pointing out architectural details and critiquing the town's commitment to a cohesive, gloomy aesthetic, while Lung Su would glide silently beside him, a shadow at his side. One evening, after a minor skirmish with a couple of Madame Yu's shadow minions, Lung Su had dispatched them easily, but not before one of them had scratched Yang Tian's cheek with a claw-like nail. They found themselves on the rooftop of the mansion, watching the bruised purple sky darken into night. Yang Tian dabbed at the cut on his cheek with his sleeve. It was shallow, already healing. "Worth it," he declared, leaning back on his hands. "This is the most fun I've ever had." Back home, the biggest drama was whether someone forgot their blocking. Here, I get to fight shadow demons with a hot ghost. My life is officially an indie film, and I am here for it. Lung Su stood at the edge of the roof, his back to Yang Tian, his dark hair stirring in the cold breeze. "You should not have been hurt. I should have been faster." Yang Tian rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go. The brooding. The self-flagellation. Suji, it's a scratch. I've gotten worse paper cuts from my play scripts." He stood up and walked over to stand beside Lung Su. He bumped his shoulder against the ghost's arm. It was solid, warm, where Yang Tian had been touching it. "Hey," Yang Tian said softly. "Look at me." Lung Su turned. His dark eyes were troubled, full of an ancient, aching loneliness that the past weeks had only just begun to soothe. Yang Tian grinned, that brilliant sunshine grin that never failed to disarm him. "You're the best scene partner I've ever had. You know that? Terrifyingly dedicated, a little intense, incredibly handsome, which is a nice bonus. But mostly," he reached up and cupped Lung Su's cold face in his warm hands. "You're real. You see me, and I see you." Lung Su's breath, a breath he didn't need, caught in his throat. The warmth of Yang Tian's palms seeped into his cold skin, and for a moment he felt almost alive. He didn't understand the feeling. He didn't have a name for it. He just knew that he wanted to be closer to that warmth. He wanted to feel it everywhere. He leaned in. It was a slow, hesitant movement, giving Yang Tian every chance to pull away. Yang Tian didn't pull away. His eyes fluttered shut, and his smile softened into something expectant, hopeful. When Lung Su's cold lips met his warm ones, it was like the first touch all over again. A jolt of electricity, a rush of sensation that was both foreign and utterly, perfectly right. The kiss was gentle, questioning, a ghost of a touch that held centuries of longing within it. Yang Tian melted into it. He sighed against Lung Su's mouth, his hands sliding from his cheeks to tangle in his dark, silky hair. He pulled him closer, deepening the kiss, pouring all his warmth, his sunshine, his irrepressible joy into the cold, lonely ghost. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Lung Su, impossibly, felt the ghost of a pulse hammering in his throat. Yang Tian's eyes fluttered open. They were bright, soft, and full of a tenderness that made Lung Su's ancient heart ache. He grinned, a little dazed. "Wow," he whispered, his forehead resting against Lung Su's. Now that's good character motivation. Lung Su, the terrifying killer, the Ghost King, the eater of fear, let out a sound that was suspiciously like a laugh. He pulled Yang Tian into his arms, holding him close against his cold chest, and pressed a kiss to the top of his head. "Insufferable," he murmured into his hair. "My insufferable sunbeam." Chapter 7. The Witch's Gambit. Madame Yu was not accustomed to losing. For a century, she had schemed, plotted, and sacrificed, all for the chance to bind the Ghost King's power to her own. And now, her plans were thwarted by a human, a smiling, chattering, utterly infuriating human who had somehow done what no sorcerer, no demon, no spirit had ever done. He had softened the unsoftenable. If she couldn't have Lung Su's power, she would use his weakness against him. 3 nights after the rooftop kiss, Yang Tian was alone. Lung Su had been called away by a disturbance on the other side of town, a distraction, though they didn't know it yet. Yang Tian was in his green room, writing in his notebook, when a sickly green light began to seep through the cracks in the walls. He looked up, his heart lurching. "Oh, you got to be kidding me." The light coalesced into Madame Yu. She looked worse than before. Her form flickered, her beauty marred by a jagged crack running across her face like a broken porcelain doll. But her eyes burned with a vengeful fury. "Little sunbeam," she hissed. All alone, Yang Tian scrambled to his feet, grabbing a nearby candlestick. It felt pathetically inadequate. "He'll be back," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Oh, I'm counting on it," she purred. "But by the time he arrives, you'll be mine." She raised her hands, and the green light exploded. It wasn't an attack meant to kill. It was a trap. The light wrapped around Yang Tian like spectral chains, lifting him off his feet. He struggled, but it was useless. The light was cold, invasive, and it was draining him. He felt his warmth, his energy, his very essence, being pulled away, siphoned into the witch's broken form. He tried to fight, to cling to his optimism, but it was like trying to hold on to water. His thoughts grew sluggish. His limbs grew heavy. The world began to fade at the edges. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Madame Yu's triumphant smile. On the other side of town, Lung Su felt it. One moment, the world was normal, or as normal as it ever was. The next, there was a void, a Yang Tian-shaped hole in the fabric of his perception. The warmth that had become the center of his existence, the light that had chased away 8 centuries of darkness, was gone. The minions he had been facing didn't even have time to scream. The darkness that erupted from Lung Su was not anger. It was not fury. It was pure, unadulterated rage, a primal force of nature that unmade everything in its path. He didn't travel to the mansion. He became there. He materialized in the green room, just as Madame Yu was preparing to deliver the final blow, to fully drain Yang Tian's life force and bind it to herself forever. She looked up, and for the first time in her long, wretched life, Madame Yu knew what true terror felt like. Lung Su wasn't a ghost anymore. He was an apocalypse. The air around him screamed. The walls began to bleed. Reality itself seemed to fracture under the weight of his fury. "You took my Sunday." He didn't fight her. He didn't give her a chance. He simply unmade her. He reached into the very core of her being and pulled, scattering her essence to the 4 winds, erasing her from existence with a scream of rage that was also, somehow, a scream of grief. The moment she was gone, the green light vanished. Yang Tian's bound form fell to the floor, limp and pale. Lung Su was at his side in an instant, the fury draining away, replaced by a terror far greater than anything he had ever inflicted. He gathered Yang Tian into his arms. He was cold, too cold. His vibrant, warm, living sunbeam was shivering, his skin ashen, his eyes closed. "No," Lung Su whispered, his voice cracking. "No, no, no. Yang Tian. Tianer, open your eyes. Please." A long, agonizing moment passed. Then, Yang Tian's eyelids fluttered. His eyes, dimmed but still there, focused on Lung Su's face. A weak, trembling smile touched his lips. "Knew you'd come," he whispered, his voice a mere thread of sound. But your timing's off. You were supposed to be here in the first act. Very unprofessional. Lung Su let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled Yang Tian closer, pressing his cold lips to his forehead, his cheeks, his eyelids. Quiet, you insufferable sunbeam, he breathed against his skin. Just be quiet and let me hold you. Yang Tian's weak hand came up and patted Lung Su's arm. Okay, he murmured, but only because you said, hold me like it was a line from a romance novel. Very convincing. 10 out of 10. And wrapped in the arms of the most feared entity in the underworld, Yang Tian closed his eyes and slept. Chapter 8. The Final Curtain Call. It took Yang Tian 3 days to recover. Lung Su didn't leave his side for a single moment. He brought him water, adjusted his cushions, and sat in silent vigil, watching the color slowly return to his cheeks, the warmth slowly seep back into his skin. He told him stories, not of terror, but of his mortal life, of the brother he had loved and lost, of the wife whose smile had been like sunshine. He told him things he had never told anyone. Yang Tian listened and held his hand and slowly, steadily got better. On the third evening, Yang Tian was sitting up, propped against Lung Su's chest, munching on some stale crackers they'd found. He was still pale, still weak, but his eyes had regained their sparkle. So, he said, crunching a cracker, what's the plan now? Do we rebuild? Open a bed and breakfast? The haunted mansion, where the ghosts are grumpy and the popcorn is stale. Lung Su was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and heavy. You have to go back. Yang Tian stopped crunching. He twisted to look up at Lung Su's face. What? To your world. Your real world. Lung Su's jaw was tight. You almost died, Tianer. Because of me. Because of my world. I cannot. His voice broke. I cannot lose you. The only way to keep you safe is to send you back. Yang Tian stared at him for a long, unblinking moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was a fond, incredulous, utterly Yang Tian laugh. He set down his crackers, twisted around fully, and took Lung Su's cold face in his warm hands. Send me back, he repeated. Send me back to a world of acting classes and auditions and student loans, to a stage where the biggest drama is whether the lead remembers their lines, to a life where the most exciting thing that happens is a really good review in the school paper. He shook his head, his eyes shining. No way, Suji. No way. But I'm exactly where I belong, Yang Tian said firmly. I'm with a hot, emotionally constipated ghost king who makes terrible first entrances but gives excellent cuddles. I have a town full of creepy ambience and shadow minions to critique. I have purpose. I have. His voice softened. I have you. You think I'm going to give that up because of one almost death? Please. I'm a theater kid. Drama follows me wherever I go. I'd rather have this drama. The kind that matters. Lung Su stared at him, his dark eyes wide, his ancient heart pounding. You would stay? In this world of death and darkness? For me? Yang Tian grinned. For you? I direct a one-man show in the underworld for you. Now, stop being noble and kiss me. Lung Su didn't need to be told twice. The kiss was different this time. It wasn't the gentle, questioning touch of their first. It was deeper, more passionate, a claiming and a surrender all at once. Yang Tian's warmth flooded into Lung Su, and Lung Su's cool solidity grounded Yang Tian. They kissed until they were both breathless, until the world outside, the little parlor, ceased to exist. That night, they shared more than kisses. In the soft, flickering candlelight of Yang Tian's green room, they came together in a union of chill and warmth, of death and life, of 8 centuries of loneliness and 1 lifetime of irrepressible joy. Lung Su learned the taste of Yang Tian's skin, the sound of his gasps, the way his body arched and melted under his touch. Yang Tian learned the strength in Lung Su's cold hands, the vulnerability in his dark eyes, the way centuries of solitude could be soothed by simple, human connection. It was tender. It was passionate. It was Yang Tian whispered afterwards, curled against Lung Su's chest. The best scene I've ever been in. Epilogue. 6 months later. Raven's Peak had changed. It was still gloomy. It was still foggy. The buildings still leaned at precarious angles, and the sky was still the color of a bad bruise. But there was something different in the air. A warmth, perhaps. A lightness. Yang Tian stood in the town square, addressing a small crowd of translucent, flickering spirits. They listened with varying degrees of attention. Some were fascinated, some were bored. One was trying to eat its own hand. "Okay, Mr. Chun," Yang Tian said, pointing to a grumpy-looking spirit in Qing dynasty robes. "You're upset because the new spirit, Xiao Wang, keeps humming in the library, which was your haunting spot for 200 years. Xiao Wang, you're upset because Mr. Chen glares at you every time you try to move a book. Am I getting this right?" The two spirits nodded. "Okay, here's the compromise." Yang Tian beamed. "Mr. Chen, you get the library from midnight to dawn. Xiao Wang, you get it from dusk to midnight. And on the third Thursday of every month, we have a shared haunting hour where you both get to scare anyone foolish enough to enter. It's team building. What do you say?" The spirits looked at each other. Slowly, grudgingly, they nodded. "Excellent. Dispute resolved." Next, from the shadows of a nearby building, Lung Su watched. He watched his impossible, wonderful, utterly insane human mediate disputes between ghosts, complement their haunting techniques, and offer them snacks. He watched as the spirits, once bound by their own misery, began to interact, to find a strange kind of community under Yang Tian's cheerful direction. He had been the terrifying killer, the ghost king, the eater of fear. And now, he was simply the partner of the town's eccentric, fearless human. And he had never been happier. Yang Tian finished with the last spirit and turned, scanning the square until his eyes found Lung Su in the shadows. His face broke into that brilliant, sunshine grin. He raised his hand and blew a kiss across the foggy square. Lung Su caught it. He pressed his cold fingers to his cold lips, and for a moment, he could swear he felt the warmth. He stepped out of the shadows and walked towards his sunbeam, a soft, terrifyingly beautiful smile on his face. "The spirits are getting along," Yang Tian said as he approached. "I'm basically a supernatural therapist now. You should be very proud." Lung Su pulled him into his arms, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I'm always proud of you," he murmured. Yang Tian tilted his head up, his eyes sparkling. "Yeah, always." They stood there in the foggy square, the Ghost King and his sunshine, surrounded by the town they were slowly, impossibly bringing to life. And for the first time in 800 years, Lung Su's cold heart felt something that, for once, wasn't fear. It was joy.